Let's see what the people are saying. Oh my God. Balaclavas are not inclusive to the hard of hearing. Should probably do something about that. There we go. Want to make sure everyone gets that good knowledge transfer. How's it going, guys? I'm Kit Creep. Welcome back. I'm probably going to start doing this a lot more from now on because I just do not like balaclavas. No, I didn't break my nose. If you want to learn more about this thing, go ahead and check out my video on headwear. But today we're going to be talking about base layers. Now, base layers are a lot like vegetables. They're kind of boring, but they're good for you. Base layers are the foundation of a good layering system. They are arguably the most important layer. It doesn't matter if you have the coolest, Gucciest Gore-Tex jacket. The base layer is what is going to decide what you are able to do. So what is a base layer? Now, I like to define things by what they are not. Now, there are a lot of things on this table here, but you'll notice throughout the video, not one of them is made out of cotton. Now, of course, in the warmer months, we like to wear cotton because it is very breathable, it's very cheap, but it likes to hold on to about 24 to 27 times its weight in water. And that's not good because not only does that make it heavier once it does actually get wet out, but it likes to hold on to it. It doesn't like to dry quickly the same way that a synthetic or a wool base layer is going to do. So the whole job of the base layer is not actually to insulate you. And that's something I see people get wrong a lot, but it's actually to manage moisture, right? It is the moisture wicking layer. Now, when you have sweat, that sweat is going to evaporate, and the evaporative process is a cooling process, and that is going to give you skin chill, right? It's gonna make you feel a little chilly. The purpose of the base layer is to suck that moisture away from your skin, move it away, and evaporate it away from your skin. That way it's going to make you feel drier and keep you from cooling down. So of course, when we think of moisture wicking, we're gonna think of something like a sport or a workout shirt, right? Now, the most prolific is going to be like the Nike dry fit stuff. And I hear people argue that moisture wicking is moisture wicking. It doesn't matter what you wear. You can wear one of these things even when it's down below freezing. And I would personally argue against that. And the reason for that is really the construction of the material, or rather the knit of it. So something like this is constructed specifically to cool you down during the evaporative process, whereas a good base layer, a winter cold weather base layer, is going to keep you from cooling down during that evaporative process. And the same thing is going to go for something like this. This is a Patagonia Capilene Cool, and this is more of a sun or fishing shirt. And these typically have a UPF rating, and that's because they're more focused on keeping you cool in hot environments when the sun is beating down on you. You know, reduce that chance of getting sunburn if you look like a vampire like me. And I can tell you from experience, when I wear this in cold weather and I'm sweating, it doesn't really do a good job of reducing that skin chill effect, right? So again, very focused on keeping you cool when it's hot, as opposed to keeping you from cooling down when it's cold. And as you can see here, I am just swimming in base layers. And the reason for that is different base layers do different things. And the other reason for that is because of today's video sponsor, and that is venturesurplus.com. They were kind enough to send out some really good stuff for me to play with, test out for you guys, give you good feedback. And they have a great cold weather section on their website for you to check out. And they're also kind enough to give us a discount code. So use discount code KitCreep at checkout. That way you can start building your own cold weather layering system. That way you and your friends can have some serious video game IRL moments.
Break's over, Roach. Let's go.
But the reason that you want to have a lot of base layers is because they do different things. You want to be able to dial in your system so that you can be more effective for your own personal physiology at your temperature range in your environment. So base layers are divided into 3 different categories, and that's going to be your light or silk weight, your mid-weights, and then your heavyweight base layers. Now, like I said before, the purpose is not to insulate, but once it does get really cold, your muscles like to do this really funny thing where they actually stop working. So even if your lighter weight stuff is managing moisture and all that, your muscles are going to freeze and lock up, and then you have absolutely zero use of them, and you die. So first we're going to start off with this. This is a PCU Level 1A from the Block 1 made by Secre. Now this of course is a base layer t-shirt. And what sets this apart from something like a Nike Dry Fit is that it is a bi-knit material made by Polartec, right? Polartec is one of the only things that I let touch my skin in the winter. Now, bi, meaning two, means that there are two layers of the fabric. So the fabric that is closest to your skin, it is going to absorb water through capillary action, move it away from your skin to the top layer of fabric, this nice shiny material here, which is hydrophobic, which means that it is going to want to get rid of that water. And what that does is it spreads out the water across that top layer, increasing surface area and thus forcing evaporation, right? So think about Polartec's power dry material as like cooling fins on a machine gun barrel. So of course, the base layer t-shirt is something that you're going to wear when it's a little too cool for like a summer weight, but a little too warm for something like a long sleeve. And another thing that's really cool about a base layer is we often refer to them as thermals, and thermal doesn't just mean heat, right? It means thermal regulating. So something that Mark Twight mentioned about the Level 1 t-shirt is that because it has a higher thread count, it's actually going to slow down that evaporative process, thus making you feel cooler in warmer weather, whereas in cooler weather, it's going to reduce that skin chill effect, making you feel warmer. Now, of course, this was made for the military, and I see it having a lot of application there because, you know, typically they wear a silky shirt underneath their combat top, and this is literally going to replace your warm weather silky. And then of course, you can't forget to have your base layer underwear. And that's because if you are wearing your cotton underwear, then you really do risk getting frostbite in the wrong places. And then if you are wearing like synthetic compression shorts can actually compress your blood vessels, and we don't want to reduce blood flow to vital areas such as where our femorals are, right? And having something that is compressive is also going to eliminate a thin layer of air that is going to form between your skin and the layer itself. So as you can tell, this shirt here nor any of my base layers are actually skin tight, and that's because we do want it to be close to our skin, right? We want a close fit, that way it wicks moisture more effectively, but we also want it to be a little bit looser because we do want to keep a nice thin layer of air that protects our skin. If you want to learn more about that, check out my Level 4 wind shirt video. But yeah, I can tell you from experience, these are essential. When I did a Spartan race, they had us jumping in frozen ponds and ice baths the whole time. And having something like this did a really good job of saving my crown jewels. All right, so moving up from there, now we have our Level 1 silk weight long sleeve top. And this is really like a 90% solution, right? I'll wear this thing anywhere from 45 degrees all the way down well below freezing. And the reason for that is, again, the purpose is not to insulate, but rather just to manage moisture. So depending on what I'm doing, if I'm being highly active, this is going to allow me to get away with a lot, right? I can sweat really hard, it's gonna dry very quickly, and it's just gonna keep that skin chill effect down. I mean, even when I did Mount Washington, as you know, the temperature change from the bottom to the top is pretty intense. So I wore a mid-weight just to test it out, see how it would do. And honestly, looking back, I could have easily worn a silk weight top. My buddy wore one all the way to the top. He didn't even have a shell or an outer layer, and he did just fine, right? So the silk weight is going to be what you're going to want for most things. So in the Army's ECWCS Gen III system, which is heavily based on the PCU 7-layer system, they actually decided to go with a silk weight as their lightest base layer. But this one here is actually coming from the older generation of the Army's ECWCS system, and this is often referred to as the ninja top or the ninja suit when paired with the matching bottoms, right? Now, these were highly revered by the military because they're so comfy, they make you feel really warm and fuzzy inside, and they're very, very lightweight, and they are able to fit under a lot more clothing. So that is definitely something to consider when it comes to a lightweight base layer. Is like these silk weights, they can fit very easily under some jeans, right? Not just under large soft shells designed for layering. So you can get away with a lot more with the silk weights. And this older generation Polartec top is my favorite, mainly because it's black and it just looks really good, but also because it doesn't have a collar. We're gonna be stacking like 20 collars on top of each other with all of our other layers. don't really need it. I can just wear a neck gaiter if I want to. And then also it's got these little thumb holes here, and these aren't just good for keeping your hands a little warm, but they're also great for when you throw on subsequent layers, and then you're gonna have like a bunch of sleeves all rolled up like that. You're gonna get chilly wrists and some cold spots. So it's really good being able to pull your sleeves through your layers and reduce those cold spots. And like I was saying before, the Army did adopt a silk weight base layer, and this is coming from their Gen 3 system. It's in that tan kind of color, not as cool as the black, but it's definitely a good top. It's still made of that Polartec Power Dry. Actually, it might be their Polartec Silk Weight. It's basically the same thing. It's the same kind of mechanical bi-knit system. And this one also does have those thumb holes as well as no collar. And then it's gonna have the matching silk bottoms. Now, the bottoms, I'll throw these on at the same time that I throw on my silk top, just because I wanna make sure that it's managing that moisture and it doesn't really make me overheat too badly. And even if I am sweating really bad in these, they dry very quickly and they don't make me feel too hot. But I'll typically wear the silk weight bottoms down to even where I'll be wearing like a heavyweight base layer. And that's just because, again, very low risk of overheating in these. Once I start scaling up to the midweight and the heavyweight base layer bottoms, there is a much greater risk of overheating. And of course, although chilly legs do suck, we really are focused on keeping our vital organs in our torso warm. So the silk weight long sleeves and long johns are my favorite base layer. And fortunately for us, these are both available at venturesurplus.com. So that's really super cool, as well as both of the bottoms. So make sure you go on over there and you get yourself a few pairs of those, just because they are synthetic and synthetics tend to stink. Now, because these things dry so fast, you don't need to swap them out as much because they're wet, but mainly because they really start to stink. Now, Polartec does have their X-static material inside, and that's gonna be antimicrobial, but if you're using these enough and you're wearing them for long enough, they are going to start to smell really badly. And everyone's going to thank you if you change into something a little less stinky. No one's gonna wanna shiver bivvy with you if you smell horrible. Now, in my PCU visual user guide video, I got a few comments that were pointing out how they would never wear the PCU system because it's not fire retardant. And of course, if you are in the military, you do have to worry about your clothes melting to your skin. So if IEDs are a real concern for you, the military did take notice to this and they started issuing fire retardant base layers. What's cool about that is even if your soft shells and your outer garments are not fire retardant, at least your base layer, which is your next to skin layer, is not going to melt to your flesh. Now, I did get this from venturesurplus.com. This is a frog base layer coming from XGO. But what's great about this is that it is made of mode-acrylic. We can actually make something fire retardant in one of two ways. And one is going to be a fire retardant treatment, but that can wear out or wash out. And the other is by making something out of like mode-acrylic, which is a naturally fire retardant material. Now, you might be familiar with mode-acrylic without even knowing it. If you're familiar with the company Dry Fire and some of their really cool stuff, that is what they're using to make their garments fire retardant. And a really cool property of mode-acrylic is that it is actually an insulator. So I have some experience with mode-acrylic at some multi-day LARPs, and I can tell you that it works really well after you've been sweating all day. And once the temperatures start to drop a little bit at night, it actually does a fairly good job of insulating and keeping me warm and not needing to, pull off my wet layers and throw on a dry one. So moving down in the temperature range, we're going to move up to something like this. This is a mid-weight base layer. This is the PCU Level 1 coming from Beyond Clothing. And now what I like about this one is the fact that it doesn't have a collar or a zipper, which is present in both the Block 0 and the Block 1. I just find it unnecessary once again. Not a huge fan of collars. Also don't really feel the need to dump heat with something as lightweight as this. Now, across the Block 0, 1, and 2, it is going to use the same Polartec mid-weight power dry material. And you can identify it by this mesh kind of look, and it still has that bi-knit material where it has a different material on the inside as opposed to on the outside. So although it is heavier, it's still going to be very breathable. It's going to dry very quickly. And like I was saying before, I did wear this on my ascent of Mount Washington, and down at the bottom where it was actually very warm, I got pretty sweaty, but this thing did a good job of drying very quickly. And then as I worked my way to the top, and it got colder and, well, the sun went down, it did a really good job of keeping me from getting too cool. Now, I'll typically scale up to something like this as it gets well below freezing, somewhere in the 20s or below 20s Fahrenheit. Or I'll also change into this thing at night, right? So when I did a Spartan race back in February, I wore my silk weight top during the day because it was pretty warm. It was like in the 40s. And then as it became nighttime, I was getting really cold. All those ice baths and ice plunges started to really get to me. And I just didn't feel like I was producing enough body heat to cook this dry. So instead of, just waiting for it to dry and being cold, I instead took it off, left it to freeze dry on my bag, and then I swapped into my nice warm, heavier weight base layer. So I like these a lot. As it starts to transition to the nighttime, those temperatures drop, and you just want to have something nice and warm. So generally, instead of carrying like 2 silk weights, I'll typically carry 1 silk weight and then 1 mid-weight, and then, a heavy weight as like sleepwear, but we'll get into that in a sec. But something I will do, however, is I will scale up to the PCU Level 1 mid-weight boxer. Now, these are again made by Haley's or Secre, and these are actually impregnated with 3% silver. Now, adding silver to a synthetic garment is really helpful for being anti-stink and antimicrobial, right? Especially in the regions that this is going to be covering. So this is going to keep my butt and my junk a little bit warmer, as well as reducing that stink, right? And of course, we have our matching mid-weight bottoms. These are again coming from Beyond Clothing, but I don't actually use these too often, right? Once again, I typically wear those silk weight bottoms down to some pretty low temperatures because of that risk of overheating. Changing out of them is not an easy task because you got to unlace your boots, and then you got boot gaiters on, and then you got crampons on, and then you can possibly, step your sock into the snow or mud or whatever. And it's just a huge hassle trying to change your pants because of that. So what I like to do instead is I like to have some quarter length full zip pants. Now, these are coming from MTHD. I got these off of Tactical Distributors website. They had a really great sale on them, and I'm really happy that I got them because what's great about them is they have a full side zip, and that means that if these start to feel a little too hot, then I can actually completely unzip them, and then I can don or doff them without having to take my boots off. And the other cool thing is that because they are 3/4 length, it means that they're not going to interfere with my socks or my boots, because of course having that zipper at the bottom inside of your boot is not going to feel super good. So these are really, really cool option. I know Kevin from Spirited Systems was talking about something like this, and they're getting more popular in like the cold weather hunting wear market, like QU and Sitka and stuff like that. But these are actually made out of wool. So I guess we can talk a little bit about wool now. Now, I am a fan of mid-weight wool. I'm not really a huge fan of light or heavyweight. And the reason for that is that lightweight just isn't really durable enough for me. I always seem to just wear a hole through it in like a season. And then heavyweight is just too warm, and I overheat very easily in heavyweight wool. Most of us know wool as being really itchy and you just don't really want it touching you, but the newer merino wool stuff is really awesome, especially this coming from Smart Wool. This is the Smart Wool Intra Knit Top. So the Intra Knit Top is cool because it's got a lot of, well, knit, right? A lot of ventilation mesh kind of material stuff, and it harnesses a little bit of that like wool net kind of technology that's very popular over in Europe. But what I like about wool is it has some really good natural properties. It is naturally anti-stink. It absorbs less water than synthetics would. It actually stays a lot warmer when it's wet. Some would argue that it gets warmer when it's wet. And it's also naturally fire retardant. So again, if you got to worry about IEDs, it's something you should consider. But it does also have some drawbacks compared to synthetics, and that is going to be that it is going to dry slower, right? So although it's going to absorb less water, it is going to dry a little bit slower than something like that really cool Polartec fabric. They also tend to be a little bit heavier and a little bit less durable, right? it's also a lot more expensive, right? Especially if you get a good merino wool top like this, they're very expensive. I will always recommend getting synthetic silk weight just because you can just buy a ton of these from venturesurplus.com and you don't have to worry too much about destroying them because they don't hurt you too much to replace them, right? Now, I got this because I really do like that wool net technology. However, I was a little bit concerned with the durability of something that's literally just mesh or net. So I wanted to get something like this where it's got a lot more solid material on it and then a little bit of that mesh material. I thought it was going to be a little bit more durable, but admittedly, I've already worn some holes through it, and I did that very quickly. So that just kind of solidified my point of, wool is just not very durable. So you're paying a lot for something that you can just destroy very easily. Now, what's really cool about that net base layer technology is that it can actually provide 4 to 6 times more warmth to weight than something like a closed knit fabric. And it also vaporizes the sweat off of your body as it moves through the spaces in between. So instead of moving to your subsequent layers as liquid moisture, it's going to try to force it to become vapor, right? Force evaporation. But again, they are very expensive, but something that harnesses that technology and does it really well at a very low price is going to be something like a waffle top or a grid fleece. Now, if you really want that wool net technology, but you just really are turned off by that price, well, then something like this is going to be an awesome option. The only thing is that this is a heavyweight base layer. This is the PCU Level 2 coming from the Block 1. As you can tell, I really like the Block 1. And the waffle top is a lot cheaper than those wool nets, right? But it has that same concept in mind where there is space in between that grid fleece where it's going to trap air and then also force evaporation. But something that I really like about the waffle top is that those little pillars of grid fleece, they're actually going to suck the moisture away from your skin and then move that moisture up to this shiny top layer, and then it's going to disperse that water and then increase surface area and thus evaporate. So I think that that is super duper cool. These things are super comfy, they're really warm, and again, they're really cheap. And although this is a heavyweight base layer, because it has all that space between the grid fleece, it's going to ventilate very well. It's going to do a really good job of breathing and working with your body and trying to not let you overheat as much. So like I said before, this is the PCU Block 1 Level 2, and this is coming from Haley's or Secre. And what I really like about this one specifically, not only does it have a very low profile zipper down here, but it also has level 1 kind of mid-weight material at the armpit as well as around the neck. So in those places where you're going to start producing a lot of heat, it's going to have a thinner material and it's going to breathe a little bit better. I also have a Block 1 example from Orc Industries, and this one I thought was really cool because it does actually have 3% silver in it, which is going to make it a little more anti-stink. The only issue is, A, it's not really my size. As you can see, the sleeves are a little bit short, and also the neck on it is just super, super tight, and I'm just not a huge fan of that because it's just going to dig that metal zipper right into my neck. It doesn't really have anything to block it. And then also, it is just straight up grid fleece all the way around. It's grid fleece underneath the armpits and all that, so it's just not as cool. I mean, yeah, it's got the cool, Blackbeard's flag on the tag, but it's not enough to solicit, using this. Now, waffle fleeces are very popular on the commercial market, but the only issue is that something like this Patagonia regulator, they're gonna run at quite the premium. But the thing is that if you buy a surplus one, something like this ECWCS Gen III Level 2, you're going to get the same capability as these premium commercial brand grid fleeces, except at a much lower price point, right? These are all going to be made out of Polartec's power grid technology. It's the same thing, just a lot cheaper. And once again, you can find these over at venturesurplus.com. And something I really like about their website is they actually have a cold weather starter pack, and they're going to include a silk weight top, silk weight bottoms, as well as a waffle top, but but no bottoms. Because like I was saying before, the waffle bottoms are really just way too warm to be wearing unless it's literally like -50. But what I will say about the top and the bottom together is they're really nice when you're going to sleep, right? These are the best pajamas you will ever wear, right? So if you are bedding down and you're getting in your sleeping bag, having some dry waffle fleeces to get into, it's life-changing, right? They're super great. You know, when our grandpas told us how they had to like get naked to get into their sleeping bags in the Army, well, you know, you don't have to do that. You can change into a really nice comfy waffle fleece. So the waffle top is going to give you the most amount of insulation. And because of that, not only is it a heavyweight base layer, but it can also be a lightweight mid layer, right? Stacking base layers is not too uncommon in the cold weather, mountaineering, winter sports world, right? There are some people where instead of using a mid-weight top, they will instead stack 2 lightweight base layers. And that works for some people, right? And it's up to you to figure out what's gonna work best for you, of course. So that might be something for you to play around with, figure out how you can mix and match these layers. I know for a fact that I really like having a nice long zipper on my waffle fleeces. That way, if I do feel like I'm starting to get cold, I can always throw this on over top of my lightweight base layers and help me cook dry a little bit, right? And then even in those warmer months, this might be the only mid layer that you need. So you can leave your high loft fleece or your puffy jacket at home, and this is really all you need. And also, this is all very dependent on your temperature range and your level of activity, right? If you're just going on a leisurely hike or just a morning walk on a cold morning, this is probably all you're gonna need, right? Having a silk weight, you're probably not gonna be producing enough body heat to solicit wearing a lightweight base layer. So having a heavyweight base layer just to keep you a little warmer, a little bit cozier, whereas a heavyweight fleece or mid layer is just going to be way too much. This is a great option, right? Now in the PCU user manual, it does recommend at I think below freezing to wear a waffle fleece on over top of a silk weight. And I think that the theory there is that your silk weight is going to manage moisture really well, and then your waffle fleece is going to provide a little bit of insulation. So it's going to be like a warmer weather active mid layer. I've tried that before, and I'll tell you that when you do that, you're still wearing multiple layers. So I did overheat. I would have rather just have worn this and been a little bit colder. But I think if I just wore this, I was going to be too hot. So again, that is where something like a mid-weight is going to come in handy. I've worn waffle fleeces during high levels of activity down to like 10 degrees. And I've worn them next to skin, and I can tell you that I was still sweating in them. These are definitely something that you're going to want to wear when it is just super duper cold. These silk weights can really put in some work down to some extreme temperature ranges. And one last thing I want to show you guys, this is super cool. Venture Surplus sent this over to me, and this is a Proper winter combat shirt. The company is literally called Proper. This is super cool because this is actually a outer shell base layer hybrid, right? So we have waffle grid fleece material on the body, and then we have 50/50 nylon cotton on the sleeves, but it is fleece lined. So this is a next to skin base layer. So this is literally going to replace your combat top in the winter. This is great because this can be easily thrown underneath a plate carrier without having to resize or change up whatever assault or combat load that you have. Now, because this is a base layer outer shell hybrid, it's not really conducive to a real layering system, right? But I can see this having a lot of value to direct action guys or, sentries, because it's going to allow you to run a gun belt much more easily because you can tuck it in. There's no, annoying zippers or anything that you're gonna have to deal with underneath, right? So if you ask me, I would recommend that everyone goes out and at least has some silk weight tops and bottoms, and then a waffle top. And of course, Venture Surplus has a really cool cold weather starter pack. And honestly, those few layers are going to allow you to do a lot in some really low temperature ranges. And then all you have to do next is decide, what bottoms you want to wear and what kind of shell you want to wear over top, because of course, these are base layers. They are not outer garments. They're designed to go underneath things. So you want to keep these protected from your harnesses, your ice tools, your crampons, all those sharp pointy things, pack straps, these are going to get beat up pretty quickly. So having a shell is going to protect them, like literally like a shell. And also they are very breathable. They're not going to block any amount of wind or be any level of water repellent. So again, having a soft or a hard shell to manage those things is going to be very important. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you learned a lot. Big thank you again to venturesurplus.com for sending out some of this stuff, as well as hooking you guys up with a really nice discount code. So go on, get out there, the mountains call, and you must go do some video game type stuff IRL.